in that sense.
Thank you. That's
the one other thing I just wanted to say, that as far as surrender, Rabbi Shinerman, or as you were saying that you struggle with God. Of course, in Islam, we also struggle. And it is a struggle for us to surrender ourselves, basically, to the will of God. But in Islam, the way we look at it is that the struggle is more with ourselves rather than with God, because it is to get ourselves to submit, and that's where the struggle occurs. Because ourselves, our souls, sometimes they're very desirous. They want to grab onto the material things of life. They want this, they want that. They have to have it right now, and so on and so forth. And so it's a struggle to have some self-control and to step away from self-indulgence, and to get back to the business of submitting and the business of real surrender to God. So
that may actually help to partially answer my next question, which is that we live in a materialistic age. There's no doubt about that, though some of us, of course, achieve a greater degree of simplicity in living than others. There is this desire, I think, that's emerging to find a core, to find, a spiritual center that transcends this desire for things and goods and, more stuff. I mean, like you're flying in an airplane and you see all these houses that contain stuff, and there's more stuff to go with the stuff in the garage, and it's a sort of never-ending stream of stuff, right? So, and things are so busy. We're moving everywhere. We're dropping off our kids. We're going to work. We're grabbing the latte, or whatever it is that we do. Things are stressful, and I am wondering how each of you responds to that idea of finding a meaning to our existence when there's all this chaos going on. How do you stop and ask that very ultimately important question? What is the meaning of my existence? What is the pathway to that? So each of you, jump in and throw in your 2 cents on that.
It's a wonderful question.
Thank you.
I think that is the value of religion, particularly in a modern technological age in which science has brought us so far that some of us think science can answer all our questions. In fact, science doesn't answer all our questions, and if we've learned anything from quantum mechanics and quantum physics, we've learned that this is not a mechanistically deterministic universe.
Right, we know nothing about 98% of what the universe is made up of. So.
But we also know we will not know everything. That is one of the insights of modern physics as well, that we will not be able to predict everything, and we will not have all the answers.
Absolutely.
Science, however, and its handmaiden technology, talks to us about how things work. And religion addresses very different questions. It answers the why questions.
Yes.
And as human beings, we ask those questions about the meaning of life. We need to know what our lives mean.
It's a human instinct.
And I don't think there's any one simple pat answer. I think it is the journey of being a religious person and the journey of a lifetime to find those answers, and being engaged with one's tradition, whatever that tradition is, and whatever journey that tradition takes one on, is a wonderful and insightful journey in which one can explore the meaning of one's own life. There's no simple answer for any one individual, but I think that is what makes us quintessentially human.
See, I love hearing that kind of thing as a young person, because, clearly my view of religion is it's different. I grew up in the age of, the internet, and I have access to all this media, and sometimes I just get flat out confused because
and overwhelmed.
And overwhelmed because there are so many answers or potential options being offered to me, and it's nice to think of religion as a vehicle for understanding ourselves, as a vehicle for self-realization.
And it's also a vehicle to just slow down. You were saying, it's the journey.
Stop and think.
Yes, and I've often said, if you come across someone who says they have all the answers, or, I know how it goes, run screaming from the room.
As far as you can get.
I mean, we've had horrific stories about people having the answer and then their followers drinking cyanide-laced grape juice. So my answer is, you have to find your own way within your tradition. And there are many paths. There are different ways to slow down. There are different ways to pray, to meditate, to maintain some silence. There's fasting. There's keeping Sabbath. In the Christian tradition, there is a movement afoot, anew, of keeping Sabbath, of realizing, yes, this is one of the commandments from which our tradition also grew out of. And in that Sabbath time...
Try it, you'll like it.
Oh, I do. Saturday is my Sabbath because, Sunday I'm working. But so it's just slowing down and smelling the coffee and the cut grass and time with my daughter and time with my husband, and all of that is ways of slowing down and being on the journey with others.
Yeah, stop and smell the roses, right?
I had a small experience of what you're describing that is very vivid in my mind. My husband and I lived for 2 years in Israel, where life is, when we were living there, was far less materialistic, and there were very few choices. If you wanted to buy dishes when you got married, there were 6 styles of dishes you could choose. That makes the decision rather simple. Everything was like that.
Not like walking into a department store.
And that's where this story goes. So we returned home to New York, and my mother-in-law sent me on an errand to buy her an ice cream scoop. Now, this should not be a difficult errand, and we walked into a kitchenware store in New York, and there was a wall full of nothing but ice cream scoops. And there were dozens and dozens of them in different styles and materials and colors. And I wanted to please her, of course, but what I became acutely aware of is I was now going to invest my time and energy choosing something utterly trivial.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if I was going to have to invest my time and energy on this trivial decision, what other trivial decisions in my life were going to distract me of valuable time and energy because they involve stuff.
And that is the moment when I'm
And
encountered
hence
with that.
I'm so appreciative of your comment about Shabbat, about the Sabbath and the need to rest. And for Jews, the Sabbath is about stopping not only work, but stopping creating things. Don't make. Sit back instead and appreciate God's creation. Because while we're busy running and doing and making and creating, we can't keep our eye on what God has created for us.
Oh, does that mean I have to stop knitting on Saturday?
In terms of the issue of the meaning of life for us as Muslims, because of the entire concept of submitting to God, for Muslims it's a very simple issue where we talk about the meaning of life, the purpose of life, and why we're here, and why we exist, and so on. Because it all goes back to the issue that if we have surrendered and our concept of God, that if we understand that our God is an all-knowing God, that means that He knows best what is good for us. And see, since God is the one who created us, then certainly we need to take a look at His manual for His creation. And that manual comes to us through revelation, whether it's the Torah, whether it's the Gospel, or whether the Injil, or whether it's the Psalms of David, or whether it's the Quran. And as Muslims, for us, again, as I said, it's a matter not of coming up with that purpose or exploring, based on our own intelligence, what that purpose would be. The purpose is told to us. We're to use our intellect to try to understand that purpose and try to get closer to understanding that purpose. And so therefore, the purpose for us is threefold in this life. The meaning of life centers around the three things. Number one, God has told us in the Quran that I've created man and jinn for no other reason but to worship me, but to serve me. And that's why you find that the Muslim, when he or she prays 5 times a day, at least 17 to 40, 45 times a day, there's a statement that is made, which is إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدْ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, which means that only you do I worship, and only you do I serve, and from only you do I seek help. So this is mentioned at least, anywhere from as 17 to 40, 50 times a day that a Muslim will mention this. And the idea is to remind himself or herself that this is the purpose of life, to serve God, to do everything for the sake of God. Secondly, God tells us in the Quran that He has placed us here as His trustees on this earth, to carry on this message, to worship, to show people, to share the message with everyone, without compulsion, of course. Then, and the third part of this threefold purpose is to live this life, to live it to its fullest, to not go to one extreme or the other. In other words, don't go so headlong into hedonism or into the materialistic way of life that you totally forget your spiritual dimension. And at the same time, don't go to such a degree in the spiritual world that you totally forget about your bearings in this world. And this is why you find that the Muslim regularly is making this one prayer that our Lord, give us what's good in this world and give us what's good in the hereafter, because it's an amalgam of the two. So our purpose is to serve God, to be a trustee of God, and at the same time to live this life to its fullest, in the divine, according to the divine commands. When we talk about serving God, we're talking about everything in our life, from not only the rituals as far as the prayer, the fasting, the almsgiving, or the charity, and so on, but the very fact of sitting here, for example. For us as Muslims, this is considered worship because we're doing this for the pleasure of God. Or to study, for example, in a university. Like, for example, if I want to study to become an accountant, or I want to study to be a pastor, I want to study to be a rabbi, or I want to study to be a doctor, to be an engineer. I mean, these type of things, like what I'm just trying to say is that anything that pleases God, these are considered for us as worship. Like something like raising our family, staying away from the television, for example.
Tricky these days.
The bad things on television, not the good things, but the bad things that are there that could compromise our faith. This is considered worship for us. Or for example, to live a healthy life, physically, exercising. This is like going out for a jog. If we're doing this to maintain a healthy body, because if I have a healthy body, I can serve God better. I can stay up longer to feed somebody who's homeless, to attend to a couple who's at odds with each other, and I have to go for counseling in the middle of the night or something of that nature. My body will be stronger to handle those situations. So. To the way that I drive on the road. I mean, if somebody is mean to me, for example, somebody cuts me off.
Yes.
What am I going to do? Am I going to, give them the finger, or what am I going to do? As a Muslim, I wouldn't do that. Obviously, I wouldn't do something like that because that's not pleasing to God. To do something like that. So even driving, if the way we drive, to follow the speed limit, for example, that's considered worship for us as Muslims.
Because the other guy that's a bad driver is not pleasing God. So